Our next speaker for today is Dr. Ambat Vijay Kumar. Ambat Vijay Kumar sir is currently an emeritus professor in Department of Mathematics, Cochin University, Science and Technology. He secured his PhD in Mathematics 1986 from Cochin University of Science and Technology. His PhD thesis was on
Yes,
the study of geometry of the
yes,
discrete.
yes,
His fields of interest include graph theory and history of mathematics. He has 17 years of teaching experience and administrative experience. Dr. Ambat Vijay Kumar sir has published more than 70 papers and has visited 18 plus abroad institutions to give invited talks. He has also trained 14 doctoral students and has been a part of n number of academic and professional bodies. With no further delay, Department of Mathematics, SNS College of Technology takes great pleasure in inviting Dr. Ambat Vijay Kumar sir to talk to us about graph theory in the information age. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you're audible.
My screens are okay?
Yes, sir, it is
Yes, sir.
perfect.
Okay. So, shall I begin?
Yes, sir, please.
Okay, thank you. So, good morning to all of you and namaste. First of all, thank the organizing team of SNSCT, Dr. Bhuvaneshwari, Dr. Sandhya and others for inviting me for the 5-day International FDP on Recent Trends in Applied Mathematics. As the title of my talk indicates, I'll be talking on graph theory in the information age. I start my presentation with a homage to a great mentor and an inspiring teacher, Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam, who was the former President of India. I change the quotes in every presentation, but today I have chosen, dream is not that which you see while sleeping. It is something that does not let you sleep. So, have dreams to be a great researcher and a great teacher. I will also pay a tribute to Professor Srikhande, who passed away on 21st April 2020, popularly known as an Euler's spoiler. After completing 102, he passed away. Okay. Now we are going to start the presentation, finally closing with the graph theory application in this present age. So the journey began in 1736, as you all know, by a solution of a problem given by Leonhard Euler. So it started with a simple looking Königsberg bridge problem. So the journey will be from bridges and chessboards to World Wide Web, computational biology, complex networks, epidemiology, and beyond. So a tribute to Euler, you may know that Euler was totally blind, and he was popularly known as the analysis incarnate, the avatar of analysis. Euler lost his right eye in 1738 and the left eye in 1766, and he passed away only in 1783. That means for 17 years he was totally blind. And we all know his great magical equation that exponential I pi plus 1 is equal to 0, which is supposed to be one of the most remarkable formula in the whole of mathematics. This is a reference book on graph theory 1736-1936 by Biggs, Lloyd, and Wilson. That is precisely the origin of graph theory would be in 1736, when Euler presented in the St. Peter's Academy a solution of a problem relating to the geometry of position. Geometry of position is now known as graph theory, Geometria Citus. Okay. Now, my present motivation for this choice of title is, we are all aware of the spread of SARS coronavirus 2. And in these TV channels and newspapers, you will definitely see the following terminologies: contact networks, corona clusters, super spreaders. In fact, a super spreader is, I will come to that details, and epidemiological network models, global community transmission, and the analysis of COVID-19 data with the famous SIR model, SIR model, susceptible, infectious, recovered model, which was designed by the Ronald Rose, who won Nobel Prize, the famous Ronald Rose, who found vaccination for malaria. Okay, the most frequent infectious diseases in humans and those with the highest potential for rapid pandemic spread. That is precisely what is happening in COVID-19 case. They are usually transmitted via droplets during close proximity interaction. So droplets from nose or mouth. That's why doctors are asking us to wear the face mask. Despite the importance of this transmission route, very little is known about the dynamic patterns of the close proximity interaction. That's why it is difficult to predict the number of cases of corona for another 24 hours or 48 hours. It's almost difficult because the transmission is entirely dynamic. Dynamic means it keeps on changing. Now, what has epidemiology, the science of study of epidemics, to do with network theory? There is an extremely close relationship between epidemiology and network theory that dates back to the mid-1980s. This is because of the connections between individuals that allow an infectious disease to propagate naturally define a network, while the network that is generated provides insights into the epidemiological dynamics. The science of networks has revolutionized research into the dynamics of interacting elements. The associated techniques have had a huge impact in a wide ranging of fields, starting from computer science to neurology and from social science to statistical physics. One thing which I would like to stress to this audience and all the seminars that I have been giving for last 2 months is that the present knowledge explosion makes us all work in interdisciplinary areas. Several areas gets together, knitted together, is only capable of explaining what is happening in any field of research. Specifically, the epidemic that is being, the pandemic that is being disturbing us for the past 6 months is going to be attacked only by an interdisciplinary research group of people, including mathematicians. So a super spreader. So this is a word which I mentioned earlier. I'm going to spend 1 minute for this. A super spreader is an unusually contagious organism infected with a disease. So a super spreader for measles may not be a super spreader for COVID-19. Now, super spreader in an individual with at least 8 transmission. So a super spreader is actually a spreader which can transmit to at least 8 transmissions. They may or may not be showing any sign, any symptom of a disease. So that is the complexity of being a super spreader. As you all know, the earlier version of COVID-1, coronavirus 1, or popularly known as the SARS virus, which was originated in China in 2002, was spread by a single doctor who himself passed away due to that disease. So the single doctor who was staying in the 9th floor of a hotel in Hong Kong was a super spreader which killed, I think, more than 5,000 people. So this situation is very serious. So all these terminologies that we have already mentioned is related to graph theory and network theory. That's where I wanted to focus. Now, the super spreader is playing the role of a hub in other type of networks. And you will see that I'm going to concentrate later on the special type of network called scale-free networks, and the hub is going to play only a role only in the is a consequence of a scale-free property of networks. If you look at the random graphs, which I'm going to explain a few seconds later, hubs cannot be observed in random graphs. So these hubs are going to play a significant role in the network topology. So we will see examples of hubs in brain network and internet. Now in the computer science parlance or network theory parlance, hubs are VAPs. How do you give examples of hubs? For example, if you look at all political leaders in the whole country or presidents of countries, definitely Donald Trump of USA, the president of USA, is going to be a hub. He decides. Maybe China, maybe Chinese president may be a hub. Now, if you look at the network of all film actors, obviously in Tamil Nadu, maybe Rajinikanth or Kamala Hassan or Vijay is going to be a hub. So I suppose you now understood what is the meaning of hub. Those vertices which are getting connected, which have largest possible degrees, or degree will be greater than the average degree of the vertices of the network. So these two pictures are, on the top you see the picture of the brain network, and those pictures, those ISF, IRMF, etc. are going to be hubs. Below you see another network, which is the internet, and that white brighter spots indicates hubs. So hubs, yes.
Sorry for the interruption. Sir, your PPT is not visible, sir.
Is it okay now?
Sir, actually, only you're visible, sir. The screen has not been shared yet. So you have to click on screen sharing.
Oh. How about now?
No, sir.
Is it okay now?
No, sir. We're still not visible.
How about now?
No, sir.
Okay, can you wait for 2-3 minutes?
Yes, sir. No, not a problem, sir. Not a problem. Sir. Now it is perfect, sir. It is perfect.
Thank you. So I'll
Thank you, sir.
show my presentations from the beginning. Is it okay?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Please go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. This is the point where I stopped. Is it okay now?
Yes, sir. It is perfect.
Okay, fine. So what you see on this slide is on the top, you see the brain network with hubs shown, and the down you see the internet which hubs presented. Now, though we attribute to Euler as the father of graph theory, in fact, it was James Joseph Sylvester, a British mathematician, in a paper, Chemistry and Algebra, which came the prestigious journal Nature of 1878, coined the term graph, discriminant, etc. So this is an important point, especially for youngsters, that though Euler is called father of graph theory, the term graph, in our sense, was coined by J.J. Sylvester. Okay, so we'll come and discuss one example of a traditional graph network, a tree, which all of you know it's a connected graph without cycles, connected acyclic graph. Equivalently, a graph of order n having n-1 edges is a tree, and conversely. So we come across as replication of tree, a decision tree, a genetic tree, a sorting tree, a phylogenetic tree. In fact, we attribute to Arthur Cayley, again a British mathematician, responsible for the results, more results in Cayley tree formula, etc. in tree. What I am going to concentrate is phylogenetic tree. What is phylogeny? With the discussion on phylogeny, we feel that biology is more close to mathematics. Phylogeny, the history of the evolution of a species or group, especially in reference to lines of descent and relationship among broad group of organisms. Fundamental to phylogeny is that plants or animals of different species descended from a common ancestor. Where do you find the application of phylogeny? In medicine, phylogenies have been used to trace the origins and transmission rates of infectious diseases such as AIDS, influenza, dengue fever, and including our SARS coronavirus 2. So this is an example of a phylogenetic tree which I got from the Wikipedia about the COVID-19 spreading. So the yellow origin could be the species of viruses which started in China in December 2019. Okay, there are plenty of books, to mention a few. On the left, I have, all of you can see this, phylogenetic networks, chemical applications of graph theory, phylogenetic trees made easy, graph theory and topology in inorganic cluster and coordination chemistry, introduction to chemical graph theory modeling, applications and algorithms. Okay, now these are graphs which we have been seeing during our studies in master's study in graph theory. They're all examples of static graph, abstract graph. I have not seen of any real-world network application of a Peterson graph or a Hoffman-Singleton graph for that matter, because they are going to be static. We cannot change the number of vertices and edges of a Peterson graph. It's all fixed, 10 vertices and 15 edges. And it is not easy to find a real-world problem which has Peterson graph as a model. But nowadays, we have real-world graphs, and that's where the graph theory comes in the information age, which are actually dynamic networks. It keeps on changing. The number of vertices keeps on changing. The connections also keeps on changing. On the bottom right, what you see the network is actually the networks of contacts of terrorists. Okay, so it keeps on changing. So what we have in the graph theory or networks in the information age is a dynamic network. Now, a concrete example of a real-world network is our own human brain, which is having 86 billion neurons. 86 billion neuron means 86 followed by 9 zeros. Such a huge network. You look at the weight of average weight of a brain, it is 1.2 to 1.4 kilogram, not 14 kilogram, sorry, 1.2 to 1.4 kilogram. And these neurons keeps on regenerating. And the study of regeneration of neurons, what we call is neurogenesis. And there is no definite lifespan for neurons, but they keep on interacting with other neurons. That's why we are able to think. Now, the famous disorders of brain, say schizophrenia, Alzheimer's disease, autism, are all due to the delay, the difficulty or the error in the brain network. So when the brain network becomes default, there is a fault in the network. Ordinary brain started becoming a brain which is for Alzheimer's patients and these autism patients and so on. Our human brain is, as I said, varies roughly from 1.2 to 1.4 kilogram. But there are organs called leeches, which has got a brain with 32 parts. And there are organisms, possibly the only two organisms with no brain are jellyfish and corals. So the brain structure becomes a very good concrete dynamic example of a graph theory application in the information age, or what we call the real world network. So quickly, let us see the doyens of graph theory. Paul Erdős, Proudberg is a French mathematician, and William Tutt is from Canada, and Alfred Renyi. Alfred Renyi's quote is very famous. Renyi is behind the institute in Hungary is called Renyi Institute of Mathematics. Let us just spend 1 second. If I feel unhappy, I do mathematics to become happy. If I am happy, I do mathematics to keep happy. And another famous quote of Alfred Renyi is, a mathematician is a device for turning coffee into theorems. If you go abroad and visit some universities, you will see that if you go to a coffee shop or canteen, cafeteria, mathematicians keep on discussing mathematics. So while taking a sip of coffee, they may get some new ideas, and that is what precisely happens for great mathematicians. Okay, so from 1736 to have jumped to 1959, where we come across a phenomenon called random graphs, which are basically graphs based on probability distributions over graphs or random processes which generates them. So random graph theory lies at the intersection of graph theory, our traditional graph theory, and probability theory. So the famous author or famous researcher in random graphs is definitely Béla Balázs, again a Hungarian mathematician, who has several research papers on random graph theory, including 2 or 3 books. You see Béla Balázs giving a talk in the ICM 2018. Okay. Now, on the left, you see a classic example of a random network. We are going to focus more on scale-free networks or real-world networks. Now, how do you differentiate between a random network and a scale-free network is that in the case of a scale-free network, there are going to be vertices whose degree is more than the average degree of the vertices of a graph. So on the right side, you see some 3 black dots which are having degree greater than, much greater than the average degree of the vertices of the graph. Such property is, such phenomena is found only in the case of scale-free networks. So scale-free networks is the present hot topic in the network theory, and we are going to discuss in details. So scale-free networks are also real-world networks, or the other way, we will see that all real-world networks are scale-free. I'm going to explain what is scale-free in a later slide. So let us look at some examples of real-world networks. Somebody asked in Professor Asis's talk about the artificial neural network. So you will see these neural networks, artificial neural networks, metabolic networks, all these becomes examples of real-world networks and has got plenty of applications of graph theory and all this. So I'm going to explain this in detail. So language network, for example, so linguistic people also have some, can find applications of graph theory in their own fields of research. So this is what I repeatedly say, that present knowledge explosion makes every subject highly disciplinary. So without the knowledge of other domains, you will not be able to do very good research in mathematics. So several other examples of networks, for example, citation network, World Wide Web, Internet, etc. So during the course of our presentation, we are going to concentrate mainly on the World Wide Web and the brain network. Okay, now look at the Facebook network. All of us have a Facebook account whose basic philosophy of the Facebook is that, network is that, friend of a friend is a friend. Okay, we need not be friends, but I can now connect with all the participants of this webinar with a common friend, say Srimati Sandhya or Dr. Bhuvaneshwari is going to be a common friend of all of us. I don't know the participants, but I know all these participants via that friend of a friend rule. So let us spend 1 minute to understand the structure of the Facebook network. It has got 2.45 billion monthly active users and about 2070 million in India itself. So how are you going to navigate, or how are you going to reach from one friend to another, or how am I going to know who are all my friends in the Facebook, and how can I connect another person who is unknown to me through a friend of mine in the Facebook? People have been doing this for several years now. So this is going to be a complex network theory. This is what I am going to discuss in due course. Okay, so one property of the Facebook network, or any network for that matter, is what we call the community structure. For example, in the case of a human social network, it could be a community based on a common location. For example, in this webinar, the community could be those who are coming from Coimbatore, those who are attending the seminar from other part of Chennai, those who are attending the seminar from Kerala, some other parts of the country. So they form a community. There may be people with same interest. For example, those people in the whole mathematics research scenario, those who are interested in say differentiation, that forms a community. Another group could be interested in graph theory. Some other group could be in ring theory. So they form the community structure. Now, the problem is that the network functioning and topology gets affected, or it can be studied by looking at these substructures. But the problem is the detection of community, or finding communities within an arbitrary network can be a very computationally difficult task. It's not going to be as easy as you think. But I can show you an example. If you look at this graph, you can very well feel now that all those which have been, put it in some groups they are forming the communities, right? So they are substructures of the graph satisfying certain property. For example, if you look at the community on the left, they can be say all people who are going to temples, or all those communities who are going to churches, or those who are going to mosques, etc. So this community structure is a very important phenomena, which is very difficult to compute also in the case of network theory. But I'm going to mention only one algorithm, what's called hierarchical clustering algorithm, a method of finding community structures in a network. The basic technique of the hierarchical clustering algorithm is it arranges the network into a hierarchy of groups according to a specified weight function, and the data can then be represented in a tree structure known as a dendrogram. This I mentioned earlier while discussing the phylogenetic tree. So it's actually a Gervin-Newman algorithm, which is a divisive approach. That is, in the sense that we are going to remove edges with certain weights. I'm not going to discuss in detail. Those who are interested can get from the article Community Structure in Social and Biological Networks, which appeared in 2002. Okay. Now, I start the next part of the talk by a famous quote by Box, a very famous statistician. All models are wrong, but some are useful. I repeat, we cannot have a perfect error-free modeling. Whether you are going to model the existing pandemic coronavirus, or modeling earthquake, or modeling climate analysis, we cannot have a perfect models. The basic principle is that all models are wrong. But when you have a situation where the models are not completely correct, we are going to use those models which are useful. So this is what precisely what is happening. As I mentioned in the beginning, the famous SIR model, which was done as early as 1927, is still, believe me, even in the analysis of the coronavirus 2, the basic model is SIR model, which was used in malaria and then SARS virus in 2002. What is SIR model? SIR model, susceptible, infectious, and recovered. You are going to classify into 3 compartments all the human beings in a locality. So if it is done in a country or in an area, it is only an epidemic. But if this spreads all over the world, that's what is happening in the coronavirus. It is an example of an pandemic. Okay, so we'll have a community structure everywhere in these cases in this pandemic. Now, very surprisingly, graph theory is going to attack even the natural selection principle of theory of evolution put forward by great Charles Darwin. So people are going to look at the how to ensure evolution, and the biologists whose domain is evolution, they have now found that evolution is harder than what they thought it would be. So there are a couple of papers in the journal called Communications Biology, wherein a multidisciplinary team of scientists from Austria and United States have identified a possible way of looking at the theory of evolution and the natural selection. So this is a very excellent paper, very exciting for all the graph theory people. That graph theory is going to help us explain what is the basic principle of theory of natural selection propounded by Charles Darwin. Okay, this is from a magazine called Quanta Magazine. Quanta Magazine, if you Google Quanta Magazine, you get a lot of interdisciplinary discussions in that magazine. So there is a group of people from Harvard University who is Martin Nowak. This is the person, Martin Nowak, on the right of my presentation slide. On the left, you find Charles Darwin. So what Martin Nowak did was to look at the principle of evolution or natural selection through techniques of graph theory. So let me pause for a moment and remind you that graph theory, those as a very simple puzzle of Königsberg bridges involving 4 vertices and 7 bridges, has become a tool for looking at the evolutionary dynamics and brain network and whatnot. Now, again, some spent for this viral diseases. I repeat what I said. In a contact network, the population is represented by dots connected by lines. The dynamic nature of contact networks in infectious disease epidemiology is what I have been discussing earlier. I write articles in my language, Malayalam, and of course in English. So these are recent my articles, one related to mathematics and viral diseases, and another one on brain network. If there are participants from Kerala, I'll be able to share these press cuttings through email. Now look at the brain. So brain, I'm going to concentrate more because all of us feel that we have got brain. Okay, but what was found very recently, just 6 years ago, was that it seems that there is an inner GPS, just like a GPS that you see in a car. There is a GPS inside our brain. We want to know, how do we know where is what? How do we know where we are? So how do you know that whether I am sitting in my room or sitting in my house or sitting in some other place? So you want me to locate where am I? or I myself want to know where am I sitting. So, okay, so I want to know where we are. How can we find the way from one place to another? And how can we store this information in such a way that I can retrieve it back? This is a very important property of the human brain. Okay, we can store information. Say we are all stored information of our school days, isn't it? Nursery schools or college days and all that. But when somebody gives some tip, immediately we are able to get back that information. That means I'm able to retrieve my information stored in the human brain, unlike my brains are not okay. Okay, so this was awarded Nobel Prize, obviously, the existence of GPS brain by a German team in 2000, Nobel Prize in Medicine. And these are the people. What did they do? They created a map of the space surrounding us and how can we navigate our way through a complex environment. Just like the modern GPS that you find in your motor vehicles. So they have solved a problem that has occupied philosophers and scientists for centuries together. How does the brain create a map so that we know where we want to know? So this Maybrit Moser and Edward Moser are husband and wife, and along got the Nobel Prize for Medicine in 2014. Mention of inner GPS in our human brain. So this is basic structure of the networks of the brain, and these are some references I can suggest at this point. This book and Brain, Discovering the Human Connector. Okay, now another recent research that is taking place in human brain is that the human brain uses a grid to represent space. So grid cells that like as a spatial map. You can see that our thought process goes via grid. And recently there are some articles in the medical. Our human thought process takes place in the triangular grid. Okay. Now, how do you measure the brain connectivity? So, see, I have told you that the brain is a network. So, almost all the terminologies that you find in the basic graph theory course, like connectivity, cut vertex, and so on, should find applications or should find a translation in the brain also. So, brain connectivity is well studied. And you see that the brain is also going to be an example of a real world network or a small world network. So this is the picture of the connectivity of the brain, which I showed earlier also. So a new insight into the brain connectivity, how to best model the brain so that we can understand the mechanism of diseases in the brain, which I told you earlier, this Alzheimer's disease or this autism and so on. So this is a very recent paper which came in Science Daily, 23rd January 2020, from a team of scientists from Georgia State University in United States. So I'm going to announce a conference which is going to be held in December 11 to 14 this year. Hope that by that time the pandemic will be under control, in honor of the 100th death anniversary of Srinivasa Ramanujan. It is going to be organized by Ramanujan Mathematical Society, and I am vice president of the society, and it's going to be held in Cochin. So we will soon hear about this, and the website is already on. Okay. Now I am very much under control. What I will need about 15 minutes to complete my talk. So let us take another concrete example, what is called the World Wide Web graph. See, this World Wide Web is a comparatively very recent origin in 1989, but a famous popular science author predicted as early as 1970 that satellites would someday bring the accumulated knowledge of the world to your fingertip. That was precisely I am doing. I am sitting in Cochin, and all the information that I want to give to you, you are going to hear at Coimbatore or various other places of the country. It's a webinar, so anyone can access whatever I am talking. So the satellites will bring the accumulated knowledge of the world to your fingertips using a console. A console is a mouse and a laptop, which will combine the functionality of the photocopier, telephone, television, a small computer, etc. And it is possible to allow data transfer and video conferencing around the globe. So we should attribute to the famous popular science writer Arthur C. Clarke for giving us the idea of a World Wide Web at least 20 years before the World Wide Web was found by somebody. Okay, so this functioning of the World Wide Web is that basic principle of Matthew's effect in science. In Bible, Matthew's effect in chapter 25, section 29, it is a famous quote from Bible. For to everyone who has will be given more, and he will have more than enough. But anyone who has not will be deprived even of what he has. This is basic principle of preferential attachment. Rich becomes richer and poor becomes poorer. What is happening in the World Wide Web? Certain sites become super spreaders. Certain sites become hubs in the World Wide Web, and that's what you know while using internet. So www is a universal encyclopedia, as told by somebody. But the problem is large number of World Wide Webs, unregulated growth, and the dynamic nature of the World Wide Web makes it difficult to study the properties of World Wide Web. But you'll be surprised to know that the World Wide Web, though complex and huge and dynamic, it has got a definite structure. I'm going to discuss this soon. Let us look at the origin of World Wide Web. As you all know, World Wide Web was conceived by Tim Berners-Lee in the famous CERN laboratory in 1989. And in 1994, there were 3.2 million hosts and 3,000 websites. Look at the explosive growth of the World Wide Web. And as on December 2010, 200 million hosts and 255 million websites. And if you look at the number of 2019 January, it is 1.94 billion. So this 1.94 billion means 1.94 into 10 raised to 9. That much number of hosts are there in the World Wide Web, which is a web which is spread over the whole world. You can communicate with anybody in the world wide, anywhere in the world using this present internet technology, whose backbone is network theory, whose backbone is our good old graph theory. You are also aware of a citation network, which I'm not going to spend. Basically, citation graph, those who are doing research, you know, you cite a paper by somebody else. And I cannot, this is a directed network, because in 2020, I can refer back only those papers which published in 2020 or 2019 or 2015. But I cannot cite a paper which has not been published at all. So arrow of time, it goes only backward. So citation graph is an example of a real world network or application of graph theory in the information age. A lot of research is going in several IITs in India. I can give references offline. Okay, what is the structure of the World Wide Web? This was a great contribution, including an Indian, which appeared in Nature 2000. It is basically a bow tie, it seems. The whole World Wide Web is very well structured, very well arranged, though it is huge and complex. So there is a central core which consists of most of the web pages. You know, web pages are HTML documents, and there is an in degree is 44 million, and out degree is also 44 million. So it has got a basic structure of a bow tie, and there is a central core is actually a strongly connected component, and which plays a significant role in the whole analysis of the World Wide Web graph. A very good question was asked: what is exactly the diameter of the internet? Diameter of the internet is maximum distance between any two websites. And a team of people, I will show their photos later, is that according to one modeling of the World Wide Web, I repeat, according to the model that they have used, the World Wide Web has diameter 19. What does it mean? That all information is just a few clicks away, only 19 steps. So according to the 19 mouse click, I will be able to reach from one website to any other website, provided I know the path to which I should travel. These are some basic books which I would like to suggest for network science and course on web graph. The book by Anthony Benato on the right side, that blue book is, according to me, it's a very good book for any introductory discussion on basic principles of network science. So these are the people who are involved in modern graph theoretic application or graph theory in the information age, or in the case of real world networks and the scale-free networks, it is A.L. Barbasi, Duncan Watts, and M.E.J. Newman. These are the names that you find in any of the, or for that example, if I quote the citation network example, these people are going to have maximum number of citation on any discussion on scale-free networks and complex networks. Okay, I'll need another 10 minutes to conclude. All the present information age application of graph theory comes in real-world networks. It is massive, it is huge. You have seen that the structure of the brain, for example, few billion neurons. Look at the structure of the World Wide Web, few billion monthly websites. So it is a huge, but they have got some three characteristic properties there. The sparsity, one property of the real world network is the network is sparse, in the sense that the number of edges is within a constant multiple of the number of vertices. Or put it in other words, the adjacency matrix of the real world network is going to be a sparse matrix. There are going to be more number of zeros and less number of ones. That means we are going to connect with one website to another through with the help of another friend of a friend rule, the basic Facebook network principle. Okay, so we don't have a direct connection, but we are going to reach one point from one point to another by a sequence of networks. Okay, so common neighbors. So the adjacency matrix is going to be sparse. Another property is that real world networks are form a small world phenomenon. What does that mean? Two vertices having a common neighbor are more likely to be neighbors. Right? Two members of the Facebook who have a common friend are more likely to have more common friends. Right? If you look at, say, my Facebook page, you will, if you want to become my friend in the Facebook, I may allow you or disallow you. When I say that I am allowing you, you will immediately know that there are some 50 common friends between we two. Okay, so that is the small world property that you have for Facebook, brain network, as well as World Wide Web. So what do you, let me pause for a second and relax. What is that I have been telling? What I have been telling is that the real world networks are all those networks which are used in the information scenario. Okay, present knowledge explosion scenario is that they are having a small world phenomena. All of us are related together by a few number of steps, small number of steps. So the basic principle of small world network is that most nodes are not neighbors of one another, but most nodes can be reached from every other by a small number of steps. I repeatedly say, not very likely that not two persons are not friends, but I can reach from one person to another by a finite number of small steps. That is the basic principle of small world phenomena. That is strangers being linked by a mutual acquaintance. FB, Facebook, is an example of a small world network. And you can see that it is searchable, but because two persons who are 5 friends links away could navigate from one person to the other by knowing only the friends at each point, but not knowing anyone's friends of friends. Okay, I need not know about the details of the friend of you. Right? So that is how the Facebook principle works. So I will introduce one parameter which are interesting for a large network like this. See, ordinary concept like, say, for example, cut vertex doesn't make sense in a network with a few billion vertices, isn't it? You have look at a World Wide Web graph which has got few billion vertices. There is no sense in saying about one vertex whose removal is going to disconnect the graph. So existence of a cut vertex is not of interest in the real world networks. Somebody asked me, can you apply domination techniques in real world networks? It could be possible, but people are yet to find results on domination in real world networks. But one discussion which I would like to continue is that the notion of a clustering coefficient. There is a local clustering coefficient and global clustering coefficient. And the clustering coefficient is how dense are vertices of other vertices to a particular set of vertices. This is precisely the clustering coefficient. If you want a mathematical definition of a local clustering coefficient, you can look at the clustering coefficient of the vertex Vi is look at the cardinality of set of all edges connecting the vertices of the neighbors of the vertex Vi. I shall repeat. Look at the clustering coefficient of the vertex Vi. Look at the number of edges which are joining the vertices in the neighbors of the particular vertex Vi. Multiply by 2 and divide by Ki into Ki minus 1. What is Ki? Ki is the degree of the vertex Vi, or cardinality of the neighborhood of Vi. And if you take the sum of the if you take the average of the cluster coefficients of the vertices, that is sigma CVI by total number of vertices, what you get is the global or the clustering coefficient of the graph. And small world property implies the clustering coefficient must be large. You should have a large cluster. I will show you a picture of a small world network later. Another notion is average distance. Look at the sum of the distances of the various vertices in the graph and divide it by NC2. So you can easily calculate that the average distance of Peterson graph is 2 by 3. And again, small world property or scale-free networks or real-world networks means that average distance must be as small as possible. So I have introduced to you two notions. One is clustering coefficient, which should be as big as possible, and the average distance should be as small as possible to characterize the real-world networks or a network with a small world phenomenon. Again, one simple example, you can easily identify the hub that with a bigger black dot has got a degree, which is much bigger than the average degree of the vertex, which is 3.8. If you look at this graph, you will find that the degree is 8. That is going to be a hub. That is going to be a super spreader if it is a pandemic network, because this is going to have a maximum possible transmission. So I'm trying to use the most recent terminologies which you find in the television channels and newspapers, which are close to our network theory. That is super spreader, coronavirus, cluster, as I told in the beginning. These are the terminologies which have been seen in the newspapers and channels, and which is going to create a huge problem for all of us. So this is a small network. I have identified two hubs in this graph. Average degree is 3.8, average shortest path length is 1.8, and clustering coefficient is 0.5. Okay, so what I told all this is that there are new terminologies that you should know to understand the study of small world phenomena or real world network, or look at the application of network theory in the information age. So I will start with one property that you find in these graphs, what's called power law distribution. Power law distribution, I will take hardly 10 minutes to complete. Look at the number of vertices in a graph with the degree k. That is what I have denoted by nkg. That is set of all vertices in the vertex set of the graph whose degree is k. Right. The order of G is n. Look at the degree distribution. That is the sequence nkg, where k ranges from 0 to n. Okay, so degree 1, degree 2, degree 3, etc. Right, up to n minus 1, sorry. So the degree distribution of G follows a power law. If for each degree k, look at nkg by n. Nkg is the number of vertices of degree k divided by total number of vertices. It should be asymptotically proportional to k power minus beta for some constant beta. Okay, I will show you the picture of a power law graph within 1 minute. So beta is called the exponent of the power law. So nkg by n is proportional to k power minus beta. If you take log nkg is log n minus beta log k. which is just the equation of a straight line in the log-log plot. Okay, with the slope minus b. Y is equal to mx plus c. M is the slope, right? The slope is minus beta. So beta, which fixes the power law distribution, which varies for various types of network, is going to be a key factor that you have to find when you identify that it is going to be a graph with power law distribution. So A.L. Barabasi, whom I showed you earlier, has proved that the World Wide Web has this beta 2.1. And if you look at the earlier books which I have suggested, you have got several exercises and problems for finding the power, the beta. Are the following graphs, power law graphs? Such exercises are there on those books. So look at here. So this is an example of a graph following a power law. What does it mean? There are going to be vertices with huge, a large number of vertices with a very large degree. Okay, there is going to be a cluster towards certain degrees. And this is the characteristic property of a power law graph. So protein-protein interaction network is another example of a real-world network or a biologic network. And people have found that beta for PPI, protein-protein interaction network, is going to be 1.6. At this point, let me tell you one thing. For all type of real-world networks, the beta is going to be between 2 and 3. But except for biological networks, for which there are examples of networks like PPI, where this beta is going to be less than 2. In this case, it is going to be 1.6. The reason is that biological network is more complex than information theoretic network, information network or internet. Okay, so the biology is more difficult than computer science, so to say, right? So there are plenty of examples for small world networks and real world networks. They are also called scale-free networks. So as I told earlier, the highest degree nodes are called hubs or super spreaders. And I would suggest you to look at the paper by Newman, the structure and function of complex networks, which came in 2003. In fact, that is the paper which gave me to confidence to study the scale-free networks. And it's a very, very well cited paper. It is more than, I think, 100 pages. So it's the origin of this theory of scale-free networks, which came in Siam Review. And scale-free, a network. So look at the definition of a scale-free network. A network is called scale-free, or it follows a small world phenomena, or it follows a power law distribution. Is that the characteristics of the network are independent of the size of the network. That means that when the network grows, the underlying structure remains the same. That's why it's called free of scale, scale free. And such networks are abundant in nature, as I have given example. Our brain network, World Wide Web, biological networks, metabolic networks, protein-protein interaction networks, full of biology. That's what I told you in the beginning. Biology is coming closer and closer to mathematics. So this is a famous theory of 6 degrees of separation. So I'm going to wind up in another 5 minutes. So a social scientist in 1967 established an experiment that any 2 human beings or any 2 organisms are 6 steps away. So this is the basic principle of 6 degrees of separation. The idea that everyone is at most 6 steps away from any other person on earth. What does that mean? It's a chain of a friend rule, right? So any 2 human beings are at most 6 degrees separated. Means that, for example, I am myself and Donald Trump, President of the USA, or Madonna, or Dalai Lama, or the Queen Elizabeth of England. They're all going to be only 6 steps away from us. That's what it means. So a proof of this statement was given by Microsoft Research Scheme about 10 years ago. This data is about 10 years ago. So how did they do? They proved that there exists actually a 6 degrees of separation. After checking 30 billion electronic messages among 180 million people from various countries, they have found that actually we are apart 6 degrees. Okay, 6 steps away. So this is what's called 6 degrees of freedom. In other words, you are linked by a string of 7 or fewer acquaintances to anyone else in this world. Okay. But you are again surprised to know that in the Facebook network, the Zuckerberg, Mark Zuckerberg, who is the research coordinator, or is the CEO of Facebook, has found that it is 3.57 only. So degree of separation of the Facebook network is only 3.57. Relax. What does it mean? The Facebook is so thick or so close or so closer that I am able to connect from any of you to any other person in at most 4 steps. That means it is more close, or Facebook becomes more of a small world phenomenon. So this is my concluding slide. So World Wide Web is an infinite imaginary library. The number of web pages exceed human population. That is 1.94 into 10 raised to 9 in 2019, about last year, January. So basic question of all of us is, why should we worry about that? The number of web pages increases, let it increase. But you should worry because mathematics will be more complex. We may need more new mathematics, right? To understand the structure of the World Wide Web as well as the dynamic property of the World Wide Web, old terminologies, old concepts will not be helpful. So we need to have a research team in the for World Wide Web. So we need a new mathematics and a new interdisciplinary approach. You may know that for IBM and Microsoft, they all have a core research team consisting of thousands of mathematicians, physicists, computer science people, statistics people. So this is the thing that the younger research scholars should understand, that if you are confined to one area, they will not be fit for doing research in an interdisciplinary area. So my advice to all young or even other researchers is that you please you please do interdisciplinary research so that you will know what is happening in other field of research. I've given you some examples like Brain Network, World Wide Web, Citation Network, and there are plenty of scope. Of course, the research areas are not as easy as you think. It should be quite challenging. The problems are challenging, but there are problems which you can tackle, and you should work hard to get a PhD degree. So I'm going to conclude with some references. Network Approaches to Diseases of the Brain. Evolution of Networks, that's a very good book by Mendes and Darkwater. And also there is a relationship between fractal and power law graph and chaos theory. See, look at this, they are all interrelated. Fractal theory, which is actually a branch of topology. Chaos theory comes in physics, the famous butterfly effect and so on. And power law graphs, which are there in our graph theory, they are all interrelated. Scale-free networks, this is also some references. I can give more references offline if you want to know, and through Gmail. So this is one. So I conclude with an appeal to break the chain of the pandemic. Don't be scared. Be safe in your own home. Hopefully everything should be okay in another 2 or 3 months in India. Now it is the peakest. Today, tomorrow it is going to touch 10,000 patients per day in India, but need not be scaring. We all are hopeful, and the vaccine will be discovered. And I wish you all the very best, and especially youngsters, please take challenging problems and try to do some very good research. There are several areas of knowledge which could be used, applications of graph theory. If you don't like graph theory, there are many other subject areas in mathematics which also will give you very wonderful research. So thank you very much, and thank you all, and welcome to Kerala, God's own country. But don't travel during this lockdown period. You are welcome to Kerala anytime, and to correspond with our Cochin University research group. And wish you all the best.
Thank you, sir. Now it's query session. Here, participants kindly post your queries in the chat box. Otherwise, unmute your mic and directly ask your queries to Dr. Vijay Kumar, sir.
Good afternoon, sir.
Yes, good afternoon.
Sir, I'm Uma, doing research at Kerala. Sir, I would like to know more about spectral graph theory. Can you suggest some good books for references from spectral graph theory?
Good. There are two problems, spectral graph theory and scale-free networks you can study. Okay. And in general, for spectral graph theory, the best book is Algebraic Graph Theory by Chris Godsill. There is also Algebraic Graph Theory by Biggs, and also Graphs and Matrices by Bapat. So R.B. Bapat of Indian Statistical Institute, Delhi, has a very good book on graphs and matrices. You know, for spectral graph theory, linear algebra is the core. Okay, if you send me an email, I can, in fact, the coordinator, Dr. Sandhya, knows my email, but I think I will write in my chat box. Those who are interested, you can correspond with me. It's bambat at gmail.com.
Okay, sir. Sir, I had asked a previous question in the previous session to know more about power graphs. You suggested IIT Kharagpur.
Yes, yes. There is one lady called Pradima Panigrahi.
Okay.
Professor Pradima Panigrahi in IIT Madras.
Okay.
Where are you working now? Sorry, IIT Kharagpur. Where are you working?
Sir, I'm doing research in University of Kerala. Under
Kerala University.
yeah.
Okay. So there is a group in IIT Kharagpur under Professor Pradima Panigrahi, one lady professor who is doing research on power graphs and zero device circuits.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Sir, Sandil Kumar Tangavelu, sir, is asking one doubt, sir.
Ah.
What are the ways we can develop a network of this pandemic? How do we evaluate them?
That's a very difficult question because all over the world, people are trying to model the this pandemic. People are not successful because of the difficulty or complexity of the problem. But we look at National Academy of Sciences, United States of America. They have got plenty of research journals which deals with how to attack this COVID-19 or any other viral diseases. It's a highly challenging area of research, but there are a lot of people who are doing research in this area. Yes.
Thank you, sir. Come on, participants, ask your queries now.
Pardon?